ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had some great discussions at your tables. Let's sort of gather back together now. We're going to switch gears and have some time for a panel discussion with our presenter and Dan and myself. And we're also going to allow some time afterwards to do some Q&A with all of you. So as we're talking, please be sure to be thinking about your questions for the panel. And there's a roamer that's going to be in the room that'll help bring a microphone to you so you can share your question too. Okay, is everybody ready? All right. Well, I want to reintroduce our panel here. First, we have Tim Thurman, who you just heard from. Wasn't he amazing?
Yeah.
Just by a show of hands, how many learned something new today? I think every hand should go up, don't you think? That was wonderful, Tim. We so appreciated the practical advice, but also this sort of inspiration that you sort of imbued in the whole presentation. Thank you so much. And then, of course, our good friend Dan Anderson, who leads Kingdom Way. Let's give him another round of applause. And for those who may have joined a little bit later, yours truly is Samuel Burnett. I serve as the founder and president of Global Justice, and we partner with Kingdom Way.
Just so you know, I'm really nervous because if you don't, she's unassuming. She teaches law classes in universities, and so I'm kind of nervous with the questions you're going to ask us.
And there's a test afterwards for everyone. So thank you, Dan. We'll put you at ease. I want to start with a kind of a fundamental question, and that is, and I'll kick off with you, Tim. You know, you've been talking about leadership and, you know, different styles of leadership, different approaches to leadership. How do you define leadership?
Well, that's a great question, right? Leadership is measured in influence. It's measured in, are people following you? I mean, if you want to see if somebody's a great leader, I think you got to look around and say, who's following them? Because there are a lot of self-proclaimed leaders out there who go, 90%, obviously, who say, I'm an amazing leader. But if you really look behind it, it's the practitioners. It's the ones who are building really healthy cultures in their organization. It's the ones who know how to invest in their people. It's honestly definition. I know it's a long answer, but the definition is that coach's corner, where they bring the right mix of invitation and challenge to bring out the best in the people who are following them.
So Dan, same question. You're dedicating Kingdom Way to leadership.
Absolutely. No. So since Tim stole my answer, I have to come up with something else. No, I have 3 values. I did this a while back to kind of rewrite my values and my personal mission statement, and I'm kind of nerdy that way, and I chose 100 values, and I came up with 3. And one is unperfumed candor and care. The third one is uncommon impact. But the first one, to answer your question, is unquestioned obedience. I think as faith-driven entrepreneurs and leaders in this room, if I could point to success in any way, whatever is that measured, you know, if a couple hundred people here, I'm just totally thrilled about that. But it's only because of the favor of God in my life. And I really try to press in to hear what God is telling me and do whatever He asks, regardless of the cost. And I think if we all could do that, you know, so last year my word for the year was yes. This year it's no. Because I said yes to so many things last year, and it was just unbelievable. But so this year actually it's different than that. But one of my verses that went with my one word for last year is from Isaiah, which says this: "Yes, Lord, to walking in your word and your ways, your glory and your renown is a desire in my heart." If I could bring Him glory, if I could bring Him great. Some of you get email from me, you'll see at the bottom of my emails, make Him famous. That's my heart, and I try to remember that all the time. If I can obey the Lord, then I think I'm going to be a good leader.
You are a good leader, too, just for the record.
Thank you.
You're both great leaders.
So how would you answer that?
Oh, gosh, it came right back to me. I think I would put it as a leader is someone whose vision inspires others, whose insights influence others, and whose heart is something that others can see as a model. And I think, I can't say I can do that perfectly, but if I can do a little bit of that, I think I'm a leader.
I think you do it pretty well.
Thank you, Dan. Such a helpful group up here. Supportive. Second question is a little more challenging. So I want to just dive into your own leadership a little bit. So I'll start with you this time, Dan. When you think about all the leadership roles you've played as a pastor, as a business leader now with Kingdom Way, a nonprofit that's connecting all of those, what do you feel has been your greatest leadership challenge?
It goes back to what Tim was talking about, self-awareness, and I call it self-leadership. Is my biggest challenge is leading myself, leading myself well, And some of you know I've shared this story a few years ago. I never thought I'd get to this place of waking up in the morning for about a year, and I had zero hope, lost all sense of hope, and to such an extent that I even thought about taking my life for a short season. And as I look back on that, it's because I didn't have, as you were talking about, Tim, we get to these higher levels of leadership and more responsibility, more pressures, more people that you feel the weight of leading or feeling their burdens. And I'm a person, I naturally gravitate towards isolationism. And I think all of us do as leaders. And I got in a place where I isolated, number one. I wasn't learning. You were talking about that earlier, right? So I think the biggest challenge for me is leading myself. But that's why I really work hard at it. Some of the things I've read, different business books say you got to spend 60% of your time leading yourself. And I think, man, that seems way too much. But if you actually press in and, whether it's spiritual disciplines, coaching or reading and conferences like this, out of the overflow of that is where I think great leaders lead well. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to press in to those types of things and lead out of the overflow of that.
That's wonderful, Dan. I really appreciate just your candor. It's not easy for a leader to say something's been hard. And for you to say it was hard for you on such a deep personal level, I think it's just so amazing to share with everyone, because I'm sure all of us can relate in some way. So same question for you, Tim. When you're thinking about all the ways that you're leading, what has been sort of your greatest leadership challenge?
We talked about personal mission, vision, statement it's great when things are great, because you're like, yeah, I'm going out, I'm kicking. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so I'm like totally, an optimist. Sometimes to a fault. People's like, your house is burning down. I'm like, yeah, I get a new house, I got insurance. But when you reach the dark night of the soul, it's in those moments, because when you get to levels of leadership, the margin for error is really small, right? I mean, it's as you get higher up. And so, Dan knows this. I mean, you guys all know this, but my daughter lives here in Denver for reasons that were due to an accident about 4 years ago. She dove into a pool and broke her neck. And we had to fly her by private plane out to Craig Hospital here in Denver. And she's been here ever since. And she was 19. She just finished her freshman year of college, and she came out here. And I got to tell you, it was the most challenging and most daunting leadership moment of my life, because in the midst of that, you get to a place where God says, who do you want to be? And I couldn't lead. I was paralyzed because I thought, oh my gosh, how do I get through this? This is a life sentence for her. It's a life sentence for us. It's like, when you question it, you question your faith. You question a lot of things when those things happen. It's been an interesting climb, but remember the North Star of I will add value to every life my life intersects. I will see the worth in every person. It's hard to live that out when you're in the midst of a crisis or chaos or whatever it is. And I think, but that was the North Star. And God put that on my heart. And so that was the thing that kind of pulled us through the dark night of the soul. And, I'm not telling you that story like, oh, poor guy. She is thriving. She lives here in Denver. She's living by herself. She drives herself everywhere. Yesterday, I got a call. She got accepted into Colorado's architecture school. And she's doing great, you guys. I mean, it's amazing. But when you're in the midst of it, you don't see that, right? You don't see the promised land when you're in the wilderness. right? Because you're in the wilderness, right? It's that sort of thing. And so that's been the greatest challenge as a leader, is trying to navigate that. Yeah.
You know, for me, I'm a mother of 3, and when my children were little, I was establishing this public policy institute and this public policy department at this university, and work was 24/7. But I had twin babies, and I had a young son. And I loved my students, and as a leader, I gave everything I could to those students. I wanted to model for them. I wanted them to be inspired to do amazing things. I loved those students. But there was a day where I just realized there was only one thing I loved more than those students, and those were my children. And so one of the hardest things for a leader is also knowing when to say when, right? When to make the decisions to prioritize the most important things in your life, your faith, your family. I always tell everyone who works hard, because I work hard, and all these gentlemen here work hard, and all of you do too, but God never asks us to work so hard that we are stressing out our families, stressing out ourselves, causing harm to those that matter the most. And that's a tough thing, especially for us that are the doers, that want to accomplish and achieve. And so that's been one of my leadership challenges, is just making sure I know when to say when.
Our buddy Corey would call that, who's another 5 Capitals coach, would call that win at home first.
Yeah.
Yep. It's really good.
One more question for the panel, and then I want to open up to all of you. And this is a big question, and actually comes out of this Andy Stanley quote. Do you all remember the quote that he shared earlier in this presentation about when you get to the end of your career, what would you like people to line up and say about you? So I'm going to ask you, Tim, when you get to the end of your career, which is a long time from now, he's a young man,
Hopefully.
what do you want people to say about you?
I want them to repeat my vision back to me. So I kind of had a midterm retirement, like after I sold the company, they had a retirement party. And the guy who had been with me the longest, his name's Justin, he interviewed me for the retirement party, kind of did a thing. And at the end, he said, if your vision is to see the worth in every person and add value to every life, your life intersects. Like, he quoted my vision. He goes, mission accomplished. And I think that's it. I want it to be mission accomplished.
Yeah, for me, my word this year is reveal, and I had to make it sound a little more sexy, so I use a Latin word, revelare.
Which is better than no.
Revelare.
But it comes from, I have 2 verses in the bottom of my email, some of you may have seen as well. John 17:6 and 26. And Jesus, at the end of his life, he's praying to the Father. He's almost accomplished fully his mission, dying on the cross, training up 12 that changed the world. We're here today because of those 12 in Jesus. And if I could say that people say that Dan revealed the Father in some way, that'd be the win.
That is powerful, powerful. I think for me, I shared with our table earlier, and this sounds lofty, but it's also practical, but it's this idea that anything I did, anything I said, the person I am, in some way reflected Christ. That's what I hope, that people saw just a little bit of Christ. And one of the things I want to share with this room of leaders, there's 3 people on the panel, but any one of you can be up here. And I want you all to know that what's the joy of gathering like this is, in a sense, when you look around, you're seeing just all these little pieces of what Christ is, right? We all reflect that in another. And that, I think, is the joy of leadership. You get to see that range.
Yeah.
Now we're going to open up the floor for questions from all of you. And so if you have a question, just raise your hand. A mic will come right over to you. So let's look around here. Any questions? Anyone? In the back. Okay, would you get a microphone to the back, please? Just say your first name and your organization and then your question.
I'm Dallas Smith with CoreCat Data Solutions. How do you lead well as a follower?
Tim, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'd love that question. You can't lead until you're a good follower. You have to demonstrate great followership before you can demand or ask anybody to follow you. And so I think part of it is you show up every day. I think you can lead up. I think you can lead up as a follower. And you can say, hey, I can, as a follower, I can make somebody who's above me a better coach, right? If they're super commanding, You can say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how you show up. You can be a truth teller to them and those kind of things. Ask permission first, just for the record. I always like to say, when I was at P&G, I used to say to my boss, do I have permission to kind of give you some feedback? And what are they going to say? No. And once they said yes, the door was wide open, and I could say, hey, you in that meeting, you're a little bit kind of running people over. I don't think that's who you want to be. Help me understand how I can help you. And I think that's a great way to lead up.
Dan?
Yeah, I'll just be brief on this. Jesus modeled this for us. He got up early, and his marching orders received directly from the Father himself. He modeled obedience. He modeled trying to seek the Lord for what was next. And he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I speak what the Father speaks. So out of the overflow of what God the Father was placing him every day is really what made him a world-changing leader.
Leadership is not a title. If you have no one following you, you're not a leader. Doesn't matter if it says CEO by your name. But you have to learn what it is to be a follower. And using the example of Christ that Dan shared, he had disciples. So the disciples were his followers. And a disciple literally means follower, right? And they learned all these things from Christ, and then guess what happened to those followers? They became leaders. And so that is the model for all of us. We start as followers, we learn, and then that helps us to lead.
Yeah, and we have some young leaders in the room. I just want to thank you for being here, because my heart is part of the answer. What I want to accomplish in my life, hopefully impact the next coming generations. So I think this is really important for the younger leaders in the room. If you can really follow well, be a problem solver in your organizations, you're going to be a leader, even more so than you already are.
Awesome. Another question from the audience. Yes, over here on the far right. Is there a microphone coming? Yep. Just share your name and your organization, your question. Oh, there's another gentleman right here.
My name is Jeff. I'm with Waypoint. I was wondering, I played football and had a lot of coaches in my life. And I was wondering, the best coaches that I ever had, one was Tony Dungy. And I think the reason he was such a good coach and such a good leader is that we had so much respect for him. And I feel like, how do you, as a leader or a coach, how do you earn your players' respect? Because when you have respect, that's what they'll do anything for you. They'll do anything for you. Like Coach Dungy, and he didn't ever raise his voice one time. We just respected him so much. We would have jumped off a cliff for him. But it was all out of respect. So I was wondering, how do you earn, as a leader, the respect of your employees or your players or whatever it is?
I think it's be a man or a woman of integrity, right? Do what you say you're going to do. Under promise, over deliver. Don't over promise, under deliver, right? Those are the pieces. And I think that's a big part, but it's also consistently do that. I've learned a lot from him, read both his books. I can't believe you got to work under him. But I think it's also that consistency, showing up every day the same way and not wavering. And again, doing some of these things we talked about in the ACE framework is a big deal too. If you're acknowledging people, inspiring people, challenging people, empowering people, there's a natural gravitation. By the way, just real quick, the Bible, somebody said, what's the message? Kids would ask me all the time, what is the real message of the Bible, Coach? And I would grab a Bible and I would put it out to them and I would say, it's this: do you trust me? If you sum it up for me, I'm just saying, for me, it's, do you trust me? And I think every leader has to do that. They have to ask the question to the people that are following them, do you trust me? That's it.
Yeah, and tie it back to the invitation challenge matrix too. I think that's huge. You got the caregiver, and then you have the challenger. And in kind of biblical terms, I think about that, Jesus was the embodiment of grace and truth. And so one of my football coaches, I hated him, but I loved him.
That's usually how it goes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suck it up, Anderson. Get off your butt and get back in there. But I knew he cared for me deeply, so it was the combination of that. And, just this last weekend, one of our pastors at my church was talking about this balance, and he had a rubber band and held it like this, and then in the middle, love is the tension between grace and truth. And there's a lot of conflict resolution, a lot of things that we step into that's really hard to be both the grace and truth, the caregiver and the challenge. But if you ask this question is like, what does love require of me in this situation? It'll give you the answer to what you need to do. Yeah.
Awesome, gentlemen. That's just great. I never played football, just so you know. But I ran track and cross country, and those were challenging sports, individual sports, but also connected to a team. And the thing I appreciated about my coach, and I had that same coach for many, many years, was the dedication, not just to the sport and to achieving, but to us as individuals. He wanted to see us grow.
Yeah.
I was a 7th grader, and by the time I graduated from high school, it was that same person and that consistency and dedication of that same person that allowed me to grow as an athlete and as a person and a student.
I love that.
Other questions from the audience? We can probably take one or two more, maybe one more. Yes, back there. Your name and organization question.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, thanks for putting this on for us today. My name's Chris Malloy, and I'm with Manpower Group is what I'm doing during my 9 to 5 on a day-to-day basis. My question for you, as leaders, we get to experience kind of a different kind of tired in this world. We get a lot poured into us, we pour a lot out to others, but when that moment comes that you are feeling tired or tank low, what do you guys do? What do you look to, and what do you tend to find that works for you?
Let you guys answer first. I feel like I'm answering first. You guys go for it.
Oh, you want me to start? All right, we'll work down the line here. That's a great question for me today, and I'm going to give you a little reveal. I'm sitting up here with these two dashing gentlemen. We're having this wonderful conversation. I have a brace on my knee because yesterday I tweaked it so bad I could barely walk or get up and down stairs. So the first conversation I had with Dan this morning was, hey, Dan, I'm not going to be so good on the stairs today. I didn't get much sleep last night. We had to get kids to school. My husband had to run my things here, go back, take the kids to school, get back here in time to join us here. And then we have other events, other occasions, other things, and somehow this leg's got to hold up. That's my example today of kind of what you're talking about. As a leader, you got to show up. You got to do the thing. You have to do the hard thing sometimes, and it doesn't really matter how you're feeling, what your circumstances, etc. But at the same time, what I'm going to say to all of you in this room is we're also human. So leader doesn't mean you're superhuman. Leader doesn't mean that you can take on the world, that you have to pretend like you're not struggling. And so I think it goes back to what I shared earlier about kind of know when to say when. A weekend ago, my whole family was tired. We have a really fast-paced life. And so we used the excuse of my husband's birthday to get away for a couple of days with no plan, nothing. I hiked a little bit, the kids skied with their dad, and it was just an unplugged weekend. And for us, it doesn't happen frequently, but it's intentional. And I think that's what I would say to everyone, is create those intentional opportunities to unplug from the day-to-day and go do something else. Clear your head, have a chance to breathe deep. For us, we love the outdoors, so that's our breathe deep. Yours might be different, but that's what I would recommend to all of you.
Okay. I'll give you a little outline here if it's helpful. So abandon annually, vacations. M is measure monthly. I try to have a half day where I review my goals and pray, and once a quarter have a full day where I go hike or do something I enjoy. And then withdraw weekly. Sabbath. No, a lot of leaders I work with and coach, they're not resting well. And sevens, go, right? Enneagram sevens,
Yeah,
and there's a reason why it's one of the 10 biggies in the Old Testament, guys, with the 10 Commandments is remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. That hasn't changed, and so withdraw weekly, and then daily divert daily. So, time with God and just time where you just hear from the Lord. I think those are some huge things. And I'll just say, too, is there's a difference between recreation and recreation. You got to find those things that recreate you, that fill your emotional bucket, Because how many of you come back from a vacation sometime utterly exhausted? So sometimes our recreation doesn't recreate us, and we got to be wise with our choices with that.
That's good, Dan.
Yeah.
Tim.
So two things, and I don't know if this will work for anybody or not. This is what I do. I'm just going to, from a personal thing. Number one, you take inventory. Take inventory and say, what's causing this? Like, what is that thing that, if we can identify the thing that's wearing us out, it's a big deal. And the way you do that, I had a senior pastor in my life a long time ago who told me we're really good at three things. Like, we're super good. There's three things in each of our lives that we're really good at. We're good at all three of them. One of them gives us energy. One of them's energy neutral. And one of them sucks the life out of us. And I would argue, if you're taking inventory, you can use that sort of filter and go, am I doing a lot of the stuff? I'm good at it, but am I doing a lot of the stuff that's sucking the life out of me? Because if I am, that's probably the reason I'm exhausted. Because if you're doing stuff that you're good at that gives you energy, you tend not to kind of burn out. That's a way to kind of do it. And then the other thing I would say is there's no such thing, everybody's going to argue with me about this, there's no such thing as work-life balance, you guys. But there is such a thing as work-life rhythm. And let me talk about that for a minute. If I had a set of drums up here in front of you and you'd say, stop that noise, right? But if I go, you'd say, I could probably build a song out of that. Uh-oh. That's rhythm, and so you have to build in the pause. The scriptures would call it the Selah in the middle of the Psalms, right? It's a natural resting pattern that gives your life rhythm. Find that. That's part of it. Yeah.
Amen. Please give our panelists a round of applause, and thank you so much, Tim.